opens with the ubiquitous nature of sensational headlines about Meghan Markle. What is the painful royal truth that allegedly finally comes out? It argues that the truth is not a secret, but a pattern, a confluence of institutional protocol, media dynamics, and clashing identities that was predictable yet devastating. The real story is not about a single breakdown, but about the immense, often unbearable pressure of being trapped between a centuries-old institution and the 24/7 global news cycle, where one's narrative is never one's own. The Firm and the Individual explores the monarchy's primary mandate, survival and continuity. The individual is a vessel for the institution, using historical examples, Princess Margaret, Diana, to show the long-standing tension between personal desire and royal duty. Meghan's prepackaged narrative analyzes how Meghan entered the institution with a fully formed modern identity, a biracial, American, self-made feminist, and divorcee. This was initially seen as an asset, modernization, but quickly became a point of friction. Controversy, the letter to her father, the desire for continued financial and personal agency, argues the truth here is the institution's inability to genuinely accommodate a person who hadn't been groomed from birth to understand its unspoken codes. Truth of the British media's symbiotic and adversarial role. Approximately 1,000 words. Subheading: The Unwritten Contract. Access in exchange for narrative control. Explains the traditional, tense trade-off between the palace and the press. The media gets controlled access. The monarchy gets generally sympathetic coverage to ensure its relevance. Subheading: Meghan and the breakdown of the system. Argues that Meghan, an outsider, did not inherently understand or trust this brittle system. Simultaneously, certain media factions saw her as an opportunity, either as a weapon to attack the stuffy monarchy or as a foreign disruptor to be punished. Subheading: The Racial Undercurrent, a painful truth long denied. Directly addresses the elephant in the room, examines the coded language and coverage, exotic, gangster, feisty, the stark difference in treatment compared to Kate Middleton, and the explosive impact of the Oprah interview allegation about concerns over Archie's skin tone. This section uses media studies and comparative analysis. American ideal of individualism, therapy, speaking one's truth, and entrepreneurialism with the British aristocratic ideals of stoicism, duty, and quiet service. The Oprah interview as a cultural export analyzes the interview not just as personal testimony, but as a perfectly crafted piece of American media for an American audience. It was a public breaking down that was also a powerful act of reclaiming agency, a concept more easily understood in the US than the UK. Examines the couple's post-royal ventures, Netflix, Spotify, books, as a classically American celebrity redemption and rebranding narrative, further alienating them from the institution they left. Truth, the human cost of narrative warfare. Subheading: The breakdown as a logical conclusion. Normalizes the idea of a breakdown, or more accurately, a crisis under extreme pressure, as an inevitable outcome. Draws on psychological concepts of chronic stress, lack of support, and public vilification. Discusses the inescapable parallel. The monarchy and the media had seen this story before, yet the patterns repeated. Was the institution incapable of learning, or were the systemic forces too powerful? The quest for agency in a story that never stops looks at Meghan's current actions, the podcast, the memoir, the public appearances, as attempts to own her narrative, even as they perpetuate the cycle of publicity she claims to want to escape. Synthesizes the arguments. The painful royal truth is multi-layered. It is the truth of an institution struggling to modernize at the pace of the world. It is the truth of a media ecosystem that profits from conflict and reduction. It is the truth of racial bias operating in plain sight. And it is the ancient truth that individuals, especially women, who stand at the intersection of massive change, often pay the highest personal price. Concludes that while headlines scream, "finally comes out," these truths were always there, written in history and in the structure of the systems themselves. The story of Meghan Markle is simply the latest, most global chapter in that ongoing, painful saga. Final reflection. The question is not what Meghan broke down about, but what we, as consumers of the story, are willing to finally see and acknowledge about the powerful systems that shape these very public lives.
Another day, another headline screaming about Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. This time, it's about a breakdown, a painful truth finally erupting into the open, and the inevitable polarized reaction from across the Atlantic. The language is designed to trigger a click, a promise of revelation, of drama, of a final, cathartic piece of the puzzle. But what if the puzzle itself is the problem? What if the painful royal truth is not a singular secret, but the very framework within which this modern-day saga has relentlessly and perhaps inevitably played out? The story of Meghan Markle's entry into and exit from the British royal family is often told as a Shakespearean drama or a Hollywood screenplay. The charismatic outsider, the beloved prince, the icy institution, the venomous press. Yet to reduce it to mere personality clashes is to miss the profound systemic and cultural forces at work. The real breakdown we are witnessing is not merely an emotional one, but a breakdown in the century-old understanding between monarchy and media, between private self and public duty, and between the story an institution wants to tell and the story a global digital audience chooses to believe. This is not a story that finally comes out. It is a story that has been leaking in fragments and
explosions from the very beginning. It is written in the coded language of tabloid headlines, the starkly different treatment of two duchesses, the carefully worded palace statements, and the seismic, raw testimony of a primetime Oprah interview. The painful truths are these: that a millennia-old institution is inherently resistant to the kind of change a biracial American feminist represents, that the British press operates in a symbiotic but often predatory relationship with that institution, and that in the age of social media, narratives are weaponized at a speed and scale that makes personal survival a daily battle. To understand why this story continues to captivate and horrify, we must move beyond the clickbait and examine the three gravitational fields that have shaped this collision: the unyielding institution, the ravenous media machine, and the unbridgeable Atlantic divide. This is not just about what happened to Meghan Markle. It is about what happens when personal identity is subsumed by ancient protocol, and when human complexity is forced into the narrow, hungry scripts of public consumption.